Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Entra Chat. Today we're going to talk all about cloud native device management, going Entra Join and the challenges and how to overcome them. I have Michael Brunker and Prem Kothandapani. I hope I got the name right. They have extensive experience and they've just come off a recent deployment of converting a lot of devices to cloud native to Entra Join from on-prem join devices. Michael has worked at BP, Woodside, Telstra, and he's led a lot of these teams. I've had lots and lots of chats with Michael, all on identity. He tries out the latest things from passkeys to everything out and comes to me with all the gnarly problems. Good to have you on the show, Michael. And Prem, I've known him for a long time as well. He's worked at the National Broadband Network, at Australian Unity, and Telstra as well. So welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thanks, Mel. Good to be here.
Awesome. So this is a full Australian show. We have all folks from Australia and from Melbourne as well, right?
We're all in our own homes.
Nice. So Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so Michael Brunker, I've been in the IT industry for approaching 40 years now. I've worked across a variety of technologies and areas, mainly around the desktop security identity space as an enterprise architect, had global roles and local roles, and headed up some of the deployments of cloud native within a large organization in Australia.
Awesome. Prem?
Hi, this is Prem Kothandapani. I've been a subject matter expert and a solution consultant for more than 14 plus years on the endpoint computing side. And pretty much I worked in various technologies, and the key ones I've done major migration. I have experience in major migrations from Windows XP to Windows 7, Windows 7 to Windows 10, and then now to Windows 11. Mostly my focus on ACCM and the Intune side of the Microsoft technologies.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah. So to do like a cloud native switch, right? If you have on-prem, your devices managed to local Active Directory and you want to convert your user base to Entra Join to get the best experience, you need to have both the identity side and you need the Intune endpoint side as well. So it's good to have both of you on so we could talk about, all the different aspects of doing that. So Michael, like what's the reason from your perspective when you worked at lots of different organizations and you've seen the maturity and transformation as they move to cloud native, not just for devices, but other from the identity side as well and apps. From your perspective, what's been like the reason that organizations usually go ahead and embark on this? It's a costly effort, right?
I think it's about, definitely about a better user experience. So when you look at it from the end user business point of view, it's this connectivity from anywhere. And it's not reliant on legacy VPN type technology. It's using the internet. It's modernizing your estate. A lot of organizations have moved to cloud or are moving to cloud. So leveraging Entra has been great. I think one of the big things too is it's an ever evolving space. When you're tied to legacy on-prem capabilities like Active Directory, it gets very stale. So whether it's AD and SCCM, when you move to Entra and Intune, it's constantly evolving. It's constantly modernizing. You don't have to manage the underlying infrastructure. That's somebody else's problem. And you can then just leverage the goodness that comes with it. Passkeys is a great one. To implement that in a legacy environment is much, much more difficult than just it's now being turned on. Fantastic. Let's leverage it. So that's really the selling point. I'd question whether it's actually more costly to move to cloud because it's just a different cost. You don't have to have the same number of people managing legacy infrastructure on prem as you do managing the actual configuration in the cloud.
Right.
And I think that's the same when you look at devices. You're moving from managing the device to just managing the configuration, which is a much easier way of doing things.
Right. And so I know a lot of people are listening who I'm very sure have a whole fleet that's still based on on-prem joint devices, and that's the ISOE. They have it tied to Active Directory and they can't even fathom how they could even switch those devices to Entra Join. With your experience, how have you gone about, even pitching the idea or the motivation behind that to the different stakeholders?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's from the business side, it's a seamless user experience. I mean, it's definitely you sign on, you get access, you don't have to start a VPN, you don't have to work out which cable you're plugging into if you go into the office. It's just the same experience, regardless on whether you're at home, where a lot of people are working today, traveling, or in the office. It's a very similar experience. From a security point of view, it's getting those trusted endpoints. Every device connected to Active Directory becomes a trusted endpoint that is just spread out everywhere, and you have to manage that. By joining them to Entra, removing them from Active Directory, you shrink your perimeter really, so that the devices become less of an attack surface to your core AD.
Just adding to that, what Michael was mentioning, apart from it, the key components are the on-prem infrastructure, right? Maintenance. We are not dealing with just a particular environment. We are dealing with Active Directories, and we are dealing with multiple other security on-prem servers. Ideally, the end goal is just moving away to cloud with just a single point of management of the services for these devices and other thing. Yeah. So just organization perspective, it's major benefit from cost wise of managing this infrastructure, because I know that from legacy wise, from on-prem perspective, you have to just keep on decommissioning and then upgrade the servers to a specific version to maintain the support. So we're just moving into modern management. That's a very, very good, like an added benefit from any organization perspective. Yeah, it's cost wise. Another one is mainly the security implications. Like, for example, in the legacy way, we used to, if there is a major severity incident or any recent malware or where the patches needs to be deployed immediately, from on-prem perspective, you need VPN and other connections for just actioning quick security components. But from Intune and from modern management perspective, the internet connected devices, right? It's easier to just apply the settings immediately, take immediate action, and your
Right,
organization data and
right.
everything is
Yeah,
safeguarded.
that's one I didn't consider. So you need to wait for people to connect to the VPN, right? For them to
Yeah.
get their patches, and then you need to find and chase behind the people who haven't connected to VPN in a while, get them. So it's a whole lot of overhead, not just the technical side of
Yeah.
things. Whereas if it's cloud managed, they can directly get.
And then there are multiple other benefits that are added benefits, right? Even users can build their machines from the home, like not the olden days of going to the office
Yes.
and then rebuilding their PC with the PXE enabled environment. It's just anywhere, work from anywhere, rebuild from anywhere, secure from anywhere.
Yeah, that was my experience when I joined Microsoft in 2020. So my manager flew down from Sydney. He took me out for lunch for the first day. And then he gave the laptop. And just while we were there, I opened it up. It had been shipped to him from, I think, JB Hi-Fi or one of the retailers. So I just opened it, and he gave me the initial sign-in. It went through the, the startup out of the box experience, credentials, signed in. And in about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, it was all enrolled and just working while we were having our lunch. That's an amazing experience compared to when I had to, in the past, go to a building, go to someone in the office and wait in a queue because they're busy with all the other tech stuff they're doing, and then try to get the device and then keep it plugged in for the whole day. And just to get to email, it took quite a while doing that.
Yeah, I think we have the consumers in organizations are becoming smarter, more IT aware, and really becoming more impatient. They don't want to sit in a queue waiting. They want to get up and running and get working as quickly as possible. I think that is just reducing complexity is a huge, or shifting it so it's a nicer, more end user experience.
Nice. Yeah. So today's episode, you both have done a huge migration, right? Was it 30,000 or
38,000, like approx 40,000 devices.
Okay. So the short story is you have about 40,000 devices that were on-prem joined, and you converted all of them to Entra Join, at least the users. In how long was the process to switch them over after you started the rollout?
It was after the rollout really started. It was probably approaching 9-10 months.
Nice.
I think.
So in about 9 months, you did that, and you converted them all to Entra Join, and you did it all without any third-party software, etc. You just did it the
Yeah.
standard way. So we're going to dig a lot deeper into, but that's the teaser for this episode. How do you get 40,000 devices Entra-joined in less than a year?
Yeah, and it's definitely with a very small team as well. So it was a good experience.
Nice.
Stressful.
When you say small team, was it like 10 people?
It would be a little bit more than that when you take into account all the there's the
apps,
technical side with the engineering, but there's also all of the comms side, the stakeholder
Right.
engagement that
Right.
you've got to
Yeah.
take into account as well. So it's 10 to 15 people.
Awesome. Yeah. So let's dig into all of that, right? All the challenges you came across and how you went about, rolling it out, because that's what I think a lot of people want to learn from.
I think that the place to start for anyone who is looking to embark on moving to cloud native from legacy AD join devices is the preparation. I mean, that's where I think in the past several rollouts that I've been involved in, it's if you don't really prepare properly, and it's simple things. It's like Microsoft publish a list of URLs that you need to enable access to through your proxy servers. And most people think, well, yeah, it's working on my legacy device. It'll work fine. It doesn't because of authentication issues. And you then find that, you're having trouble building devices because suddenly people can't authenticate because their account is no longer tied to AD. It's tied to Entra. You need to see the cloud. It's things like that. It's getting password hash sync, so the connectivity between AD and Entra in place and working properly. And it's just these fundamental basic building blocks that you really need to put the time into up front to ensure that your environment will support your migration. Because if you start and then you start to hit these roadblocks, it becomes very difficult then to troubleshoot while you're trying to migrate. And there's nothing worse than doing a stop-start migration.
Right.
You lose the momentum.
And each organization will be different, right? Like the challenges you had might be different to the others. I know the organization you were working with, you also had federation. It was not native Entra. The users were federated. And you had like a password hash sync rollout also happening where the users themselves were moving to cloud-based authentication from using on-prem servers for the authentication and MFA. So that was like a parallel rollout as well that was happening, and you had to do the user auth and then the device authentication. So lots of different parts were happening.
Yeah, just adding to that, apart from network and the other components that related to the preparation and the most time-consuming part is understanding your current environment, the key dependencies here. The dependencies in the sense there are each organization filled out with multiple legacy components. Yeah, so how we are going to be tackling them in the modern world, whether it's still require an on-prem dependency, those kind of preparation were the key for us to proceed further with the migration and have the right tools or in-house built tools that we need to look into for any organization to build the whole migration aspect. But from a dependency point of view, there are a couple of other I would call out for any device preparation towards the cloud. It's majorly if you don't want to go away or use any of the on-prem components and other things, just move away from towards the cloud migration part. The key ones you need to look into is the AD dependency, then the group policies. Group policies play a major role. Today, you have separate on-prem DC and other things that pretty much have their own environment of managing the group policies and other those stuff. Yeah. So in order to move away from those steps, you need proper planning of how many group policies can actually be contributed towards the modern way of management from Intune, because Intune by default supports 95% of most of the group policies. Yeah. That's we just need to encounter couple of issues, whether we need to look into whether we those specific 95% applicable group policies still some of them might be legacy. I need to let it go and go towards a modern way of managing from Intune. So it's like starting from the baseline or from scratch to just build things towards the cloud part, which pretty much involves a lot of costs minimization and other thing from a future aspect perspective. And the other components is pretty much related to the, apart from the group policies, how we are going to build the personas. Yeah, for personas, each specific business has a specific requirement. Like, for example, the certain staff, the front-facing staffs might be requiring a different persona
The people,
when
the
they're
retail
interacting with the
staff,
customer.
right? Who
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
in the
And
right.
they don't require downtime. Yeah. So I'm just saying, so we need to plan those things of like how we are going to be staging the personas and other thing, which can be traction with group tagging kind of thing from Intune, but you need to take it in account. Like each organization will be having different personas. We need to put in together the dependencies part, validation, and other thing that helps us to proceed further with the next steps. Yeah. And then the other key preparation area is pretty much related to how we are going to be looking into the VPN dependency part, whether still because certain applications can't interact properly directly from internet. You would require sometimes the on-prem dependency. How we are going to be integrating with Entra ID, VPN, and the connectivity to the on-prem servers. Those are the key things. And the other last key component, you need to have a proper pilot group. If you don't have a
Right.
proper pilot group,
Yeah.
you won't get the right feedback to take some decisions.
On some of the points that the Prem raised there, I mean, group policy, GPOs. I think there's also a decision point there. Do you simply carry over the group policies that you've got, or do you, in one organization I worked in, we chose the nuclear option, which was, we've got 20
Clean
odd
slate.
years worth of GPOs that have built up and we don't know what half of them do anymore. Let's just start from scratch and really start from the security baseline, start from the basics, and then build up as you need to try to clean your environment up. It just depends if you've got the luxury of the time to do that or the buy-in from your security teams. So I think that's definitely an important one. And then in terms of what else is happening within the organization from a project that is likely to impact you. So, we had the deployment of a zero trust network access solution while we were deploying our desktop environment. You would end up with issues where, well, whose fault is it? What's breaking? So it's understanding your environment, understanding what else is happening and how that may have an impact on you. And can you tie into that and leverage that or not? And so I think these preparation activities are just so key to any successful migration.
So let's say someone wants to start off, right? And Prem, you mentioned pilot as well. So what's the starting point? Let's say we've got the buy-in and now there's a project. They've been funded to do this whole switch, right? So everyone sees the value in cutting over from native joined Active Directory joined devices to Entra joined. How should someone start? Michael, you talked about doing a lot of, preparing, etc. is an important part of it. And let's say you've done your homework, you looked at all the, the apps and the users and the personas, and you understand the lay of the land, right? Or you have subject matter, people who have been in the company who know what's happening. Who should the people be on the project, and where do you start off?
I mean, from my perspective, from our experience, the people on the project need to be your engineers. I mean, you've got to have a good, solid engineering capability because you're going to be playing with conditional access policies. You're going to be playing with Intune. You're going to be creating new policies, your base security baselines, etc. You need to have good comms people, because nobody likes to have something done to them without any warning. So you've got to be able to go out to your business, explain what's happening, when it's happening, what their experience is going to be. You need to have some senior people to have upward stakeholder management, to senior management, to just let them know, because no one wants a disruption to their business. And then, as Prem touched on before, where you've got, a retail arm or an OT type environment, something that is critical, that you can't afford to have downtime. There are customers, real customers who could be impacted. Then you need to work really closely with that business to understand what your boundary conditions are. And then, as Prem said, I mean, I think there's a step before pilot, and that's testing. You want to be able to identify all the different personas at a broad brush way and to be able to just test and then start to look at how you pilot. I don't know, Prem, if you want to comment on the piloting.
Yeah, just before the pilot, Michael, just a couple of things on the preparation part I just want to add, or the dependencies validation. Yep. So for any organization, for to take decision, yep, they need to validate that once they list out the dependencies of the legacy components and other things, that how the futuristic thing that's going to be looking from migrating to Intune, are they seeing any blockers? Are they seeing any other components that from an organization perspective that might consume a lot of time to investigate and do some separate pilot for to specific business needs, those kind of
Right.
things? I think the key dependencies validation, it's I would say a theoretical validation mainly, just to start with. Just list out all the dependencies from an organization perspective, like a initial static part that we did initially to proceed for any cloud migration part. Once we listed out, we then listed out the various personas that a specific migration would include as part of the migration part. And then the major, when we did the validation other thing, I think the major part that any organization will see is major the application migration part. Application
Yeah.
migration part is the most time consuming migration from your
Right.
on-prem to
To
into
the
the
new
cloud managed
device, right?
environment.
Because
Yeah,
apps,
that's
they make or
yeah,
break the whole thing, right? If an app doesn't work for the user that used to work
yeah,
in the AD join, then it's going to be an issue, right? And I think app
yeah,
authentication plays a big part because you're going from a device which did Kerberos and all of that to a cloud native one where you're doing OAuth, and then it does get a Kerberos token, slightly different way, but then you do need to validate if all those apps continue working.
So this is where you need to test across a broad range of personas, because you can then ring fence some applications and maybe say, well, actually retail only use a small number. We've tested those. Retail can go. So that, that also helps to divide up your deployment. I think just one point I would like to get in. This is really not so much a technical heavy piece
Right.
of work. So, there's a lot
Yeah,
of
it's
technology,
apps
but
and right.
Microsoft document it well. If you've got some really great engineers like we had, then, that's no drama. It's the softer side. It's the planning. It's the engagement. It's making sure that the business don't feel that there's some negative impact. And it's making decisions on how are you going to do the migration. I mean, with the one we did, it was in situ. You basically run a script, you reboot your device, it comes up and it becomes cloud native join. So you spend, as an end user, an hour or two having your machine built. In a previous one that I'd been involved in, it was a managed migration. You dropped your laptop off in the morning, you got a spare one during the day, you picked your laptop up in the afternoon, and it was all done for you. It's decisions around what can you afford, what's your business
Right.
prepared to...
Yeah, let's dig into that, Michael, because that's an interesting thing, right? Like, what's the end user experience going to be? And you've done two things, which I think is very unique. So you've done one experience where you said someone goes to the help desk, they drop their work laptop, and they come back in the evening. Do they have to come back in the evening, or at the same time, do they get a new laptop and they sign in?
The process there was you dropped your laptop off in the morning, you were given a temporary laptop for the day, and your laptop was migrated. It was very intensive. So there was a full migration team doing the work. So It's definitely the more expensive option, but it means that your end user has very little downtime. 10 minutes while they drop their device off, come back in the afternoon, pick their device up, check that everything's okay, good, and they haven't had any downtime, but it's expensive.
So in that experience, the tech team would wipe
and they would make sure any data that had been on the device that the end user may need was copied across, etc. Where you put the responsibility on the end user, it's a much cheaper to the migration team. The organization has to tolerate, an hour or two outage for the end user while they sit there with their device rebuilding. And you've got to be prepared that they have backed up all of their data that everything is in OneDrive or SharePoint. And when they start the process, there's no going back. So it's much more impactful on the end user, but much cheaper in terms of getting the deployment done. And I think that's the trade-off you've got to work out is what can you afford and how technically literate your end user community
End
is.
users are, right? And how you train them. Because I remember your organization, the second one, they did previously when they switched to OneDrive, there's a lot of training that went into getting people to purely use OneDrive and make sure all the docs, everything is in there so that even if they lose a laptop, they sign in again, they can continue working from there, right? Okay,
so I think both work, and then there's a third way, which is really new device. So if you do here's my old device, I'm up for a new device, whether it's a lease or a purchase. When my new device comes, it migrates me. That is a much longer wavelength then, because you could be looking at 2 to 3 years to migrate your entire organization.
Right. As people go through the lease and the lease expires, like which could be a 3-4 years period, and then you give them the new Entra Join. So it's a lot harder, right? Because you have to maintain all the SCCM and all the old infrastructure and the new one over the 4 years.
And so a lot more comes into that. What is the state of your current infrastructure? I mean, if your current SCCM environment is up to date, it's being managed well, and you can tolerate a 3-year migration, fine. If it's not, then you want to get rid of it as quickly as possible. And this is an organizational decision. It's something that you can't just be prescriptive and say you should do it this way. You need to understand the organization's appetite and where they're at.
Let's take a quick break to hear from this week's sponsor, Action One. If you're a systems administrator, you already know patching is painful. It's time-consuming, risky, and one small mistake can mean downtime. So it gets postponed again and again. What if patching was just easy? Introducing Action One, they're a cloud-native patch management platform for Windows, macOS, Linux, and third-party apps. You'll be up and running in 5 minutes, no infrastructure to maintain, no complexity. And here's the best part. You can use Action One on your first 200 endpoints for free forever. There are no feature limits, no credit card, no hidden tricks. Seriously, it's not a disguised free trial. Too good to be true, too good and actually true. So check for yourself. Go to on.actionone.com/EntraChat. So if you're looking for an easy-to-use patching tool that would help you save weeks, if not months of your time, go to on.actionone.com/EntraChat and sign up for patching that just works. And now back to the show. I guess the end user experience is sort of one of the two, right? You give it to someone or the user goes through and wait for the period. So that is the end user experience. Now from the tech experience, you can go about it in a few different ways. One is there are lots of third-party tools that do sort of the same laptop, same device. They just make it Entra Join using some special sauce. And you did the other way for your project, right? You did a whole
This is your area, Prem.
What did you look into it? Did you do some research test? And like, there are both options. Yeah. Which one did you pick?
Yeah, just as a couple of things from a research perspective, we just analyzed what's a better way of having a less downtime for the user, just converting the same one you mentioned, just converting them to Entra ID Join. There are special tools, special GitHub repositories that are available that you can convert it to Entra
Open
ID
source
Join.
ones, right? Okay.
Yeah, open source ones, but it's not
and
a
you
Microsoft
tried them out as
way.
well? Did you try them out?
Yeah, we tested it in initial before coming to your solution. That's not a straightforward or a Microsoft recommended way in converting your legacy hybrid join device to a direct Entra ID type of scenario. Yeah, so Microsoft doesn't support that if something goes wrong in the conversion. And the other thing is the reason why I wouldn't go down that path as well, apart from Microsoft recommendation, is something goes wrong from support perspective for helpdesk team. It's like an expensive thing how they are going to be managing those clients with various issues that comes around, because no one knows how to resolve. Even from Microsoft perspective, they told that they don't be able to provide support in that scenario. Yeah,
this is where you took a Active Directory join device and you sort of just did some config changes and then
just
it became
initial
Entra
proof
Join.
of concept.
Right.
Initial proof of concept kind of scenario.
Right.
Based on that outcome and validation with the Microsoft team, I think I identified a separate way, which is pretty much the native Windows functionality. Yeah? We use the reset component, the Windows native reset component, pretty much what we did was the initial one ideally won't be allowing you to record multiple user interaction to do the reset of the device. If you take any Windows 10 or Windows 11 device, right? If a user initiates a reset, it provides multiple options to the user. We didn't want the users to select different things for different scenarios. Yeah, we have a unified approach. Like you can use the Intune invoke method, which is pretty much the same kind of the reset functionality. So that's one of the component that does the same reset function to complete wipe of the device. And once the wipe of the device is done, there are multiple other components you can build into that particular tool. It might be an in-house tool that any organization can build. Pretty much you need to add multiple layers. Let's say you're migrating from a hybrid join to a specific Entra ID scenario, right? And similarly, when organization won't be having hybrid join just direct on-prem join kind of scenarios. For these scenarios, ideally the tool you can build pretty much Intune invoke method is something do wipe method that actually does the complete wipe of the device. That's the baseline for that particular tool that you can use. Let's say secure boot needs to be enabled. So you can put multiple checks as a prerequisite to all
Right.
your endpoint devices. So
Yeah.
the tool or the app that you built from a user experience perspective should be minimal, just one or two buttons for the user to proceed further. So you can that particular inbuilt tool can actually have multiple notifications, like from a user perspective, how they need to be well informed. The device is going to be doing a complete wipe. You're going to be doing initiating. Yeah, and the device needs to be registered for Intune migration, which is hash registration. You can actually add a component that does the hash migration of the device to Intune as a prerequisite. And then once all the prerequisites are met, you can inject this Intune invoke method, the do wipe method, as part of the tool. What it does is pretty much does a complete wipe of the device once it's initially the final state. So this is pretty much like a solution I built in the past.
Right. Yeah.
I think one thing we probably didn't mention up front is that the approach we took was using Autopilot. So this was not just an out-of-the-box experience, this was Autopilot. So we did have to import all the device hashes for all the existing devices, and we also had to make sure any new device would have the hash registered for the organization, so that then when the device is reset, it comes up as part of that organization.
So
which
for
I think
the
is
Entra
important.
admins who are like wondering what these hashes mean, who have not worked with Intune much, what are these hashes like? What do they do?
So each device, when it gets manufactured from OEM, like it's related like pretty much tied up to the motherboard. They have a unique device ID information, which is hash information. In the Intune world, I think we call it as hash, device hash. So each device, when the OEM pretty much ships, the vendor ships,
So that's
they
like
need to upload the hash
Lenovo or
from,
Dell when
yeah,
they ship the
like
device.
Lenovo, Dell. Two components we're dealing with. One is new device component. The pretty much the OEM vendors will upload the hash and everything as part of that respective component. For any new device that ship directly to the user, will have the hash, everything upload. The main part for any organization is the existing devices. How you're going to be harvesting the hash, those kind of things. Any tool have a centralized SCCM management kind of tool, easily can extract the hash and then upload it to the Intune tenant. With we have to use the Graph API. The tool which I'm talking about is pretty much does a prerequisite check. Even if the device hash is already harvested from SCCM to Intune directly with the graph, if there are some cases where the hash might be missed, you can put a prerequisite check as of the part of the tool that does a complete check that the hash is already registered to the Intune tenant. Then only it allows you to proceed for the
Right. So for
wipe method.
autopilot
Or
to
else,
happen, Intune needs to
yeah,
know about the device that it's coming through so that it can run.
initial days, I would say that this is pretty much like an autopilot version 1. So Microsoft has moved from Autopilot version 1 to Autopilot version 2. They have moved from the hash dependency to just
Right.
serial number of the device.
Right.
So there are still not a lot of organizations have moved to Autopilot version 2, which is serial number. You just need the device, pretty much the serial number, or you can have multiple authentic like the check mechanism, but serial number is the primitive or the go to method from Microsoft. Pretty much uses serial number of the device instead of the device hash. That actually does a lot of things easier for you to migrate from non-prem to native, like which is pretty much the like the autopilot registration part. As well in the future aspects, because OEM doesn't support autopilot version 2, so that's the reason a lot of people are not using
So
autopilot
Dell,
version 2.
Lenovo, they all
Yeah,
don't support it yet,
no,
is it?
it's Microsoft. It's Microsoft part. Microsoft doesn't support like autopilot version 2, like pre-provisioning. When I'm talking about OEM does a pre-provisioning, which is the initial part is to upload the hash and then they can do the build of the devices with all the apps loaded and other thing. Yeah. But for the Autopilot version 2, the main dependencies is Microsoft. Microsoft hasn't. I'm not sure whether it has changed here, but the recent blocker is pretty much pre-provisioning is not supported in Autopilot version 2. So that's the reason a lot of organizations are not going towards Autopilot version 2. So we are still using the Autopilot version 1, which is hash dependency.
Okay. So you identified the device, and what's the next part of the flow? How did you even tell the user, like what did they think they were doing? Because they'll be like, yeah, it's a working laptop. They did something and they're back to a working laptop. How did you explain that concept to them and get them to do it?
So I think, that started with the whole comms campaign, so communications campaign. So wherever it was possible, members of the team joined various team meetings, various town hall type scenarios with large groups of the business and explained what it was that we were doing, why we were doing it, and what that experience would be, so that at least people were aware. Then they were sent information to say, right, you're now available to go. And here you can click this link, and here is a web page with a whole series of, if you meet this criteria, this criteria, this criteria, click here, you're good to go, and you do your device reset. Otherwise, here are some remediation activities that you can do. So it was really initially putting it into the hands of the end user to do the migration. Over time, where people came up with the excuses, I'm too busy, I don't have time, I'm going on holidays, gradually the pressure grew that you have to go, you have to go, you have to go. And that included escalations above. And this is where one of the things that was very important was ensuring you have data to show how many devices you've got, what's the split by business unit, because then you can almost gamify it by showing it. And this is what we did.
Yeah.
We showed a table by business unit as to what percentage had actually been migrated. So each executive could see how their group was doing compared to other executives, and were they lagging behind, which is a great approach to motivating
down,
people.
right? Yeah.
But the experience, because the devices are autopilot enrolled, the device hash, the device identity is enrolled, that adds a layer of security, because only those devices can actually be joined to Entra. And it means that when that device gets reset, it automatically looks for your tenant to join, so that it makes that whole experience much better. One gotcha that we did come across was login usernames. Coming from an on-prem AD environment, people were used to using their AD credentials and their AD password.
Like the short name, right? Not the full
short
email.
name. Just the short username as opposed to the UPN email address. And then when they'd migrate, they'd continue to use that, and then nothing would work, because Entra didn't recognize the short name.
Because they were using they would use a SAM account name. Companies used to have like numbers, the weird number combination for those SAM names, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, a good step, and in an organization many years ago when we did this sort of thing, migrating people to use their UPN while we're still on-prem, get people used to using their email address. The UPN is an attribute of your Active Directory account anyway. It's synchronized up to Entra. You just get people used to it. And more people are used to logging on with email addresses just in the public domain now. So it just makes it more natural. And it's one less thing that'll go wrong after your migration. Again, it's planning. Sorry, I can't stress enough that that's where these things come unstuck, is if you can do the planning and the preparation and just make sure it's all working, it just becomes so much easier to deploy.
So what actually happens now when the user does this, right? Like, how does the magic happen? And I heard you said you simplified it to just a few clicks for the user and it does everything. And was it like PowerShell scripts, or like what were the things, the sort of the stuff that you did, that you had to build, which was not available out of the box, to sort of do this swap over and make sure the users got the right apps based on their profile and things like that?
Yeah. So before touching this on the apps, I'll tell you, like, on the application part, like how the user experience was seamless end to end. CCM. So the key thing is you deploy something like a specific application. It can be a PowerShell. PowerShell is the crucial part that plays in putting all these components, like each and every Windows components together, like the prerequisite components which I mentioned, the device hash, and I think there are multiple layers how they interact with the central app. Yeah, it's not just a single app that's going to be like a straightforward answer for you to do the migration part for having a seamless user experience. The first thing is pretty much we need a way to actually have that hash uploaded from on-prem SCCM environment, or from like the hash when the user initiates the app, that needs to be harvested to the Intune tenant. Yeah, that needs to be injected to the Intune tenant. So as part of it, you need a separate Graph API method that pretty much you need to do the app register that allows the hook between the SCCM to your Intune environment. So once that is done, you have just tick box the first prerequisite component for an autopilot migration. Apart from it, as part of the tool, you can have multiple other components. Each organization will be having different components as like a prerequisite for them to proceed further, right? I'm not going to be speaking a lot on the prerequisite components. I'm just talking the
Right.
basic components that's required part of the tool.
Right.
A secure boot and other things you can hook a lot of things as part of the prerequisite components based on organization needs. Once you have all these prerequisite components done, other component is publish that app to be made available for all the users, not a required one, because there is a difference between required and available app on how we are deploying apps.
Right.
Yeah, so we don't want to force the users to do the migration, because it will be causing multiple downtime when the users try to migrate. So it's going to make the apps available. And then, as Michael
and that is
covered,
through SCCM,
comms,
right? You push that out?
Yeah, SCCM or any third-party tools.
Right.
Any
Whatever is
organization
being used to manage the device.
Yeah, you just publish the app to the end users with all the prerequisite checks and everything done. So from an end user perspective, it's just a simple task. Yeah.
Right.
As Michael covered in the beginning, comms plays a major role. Yeah? Any organization, for making the user understand what they are going to be actioning as part of this whole end-to-end mechanism, you need a proper comms team. You need end-to-end details captured in simple terms for the users to understand, because we know that we don't want to publish technical documents for the users. Just creating a lot of. So as part of it, once this is done, I think comms and everything is organized. I think each organization have a different way of how they are targeting. There might be multiple personas, as I mentioned. Yeah. You might talking the least personas which use only less critical apps, like simple components, majorly like I would say the native Microsoft tools and other thing. You can target them as a first phase or those kind of
if
things.
If they're knowledge workers who are only using M365, it'll be a lot easier, right? They don't have
it'll be a much easier group to target to the initial deployment, and then the comms, everything sent, everything in place. The users will be notified with the respective comms how they need to use this app that's already published. So that's how it works on any organization to make a user seamless end-to-end. Once the user initiates the app, the next action should be pretty much, as I mentioned, the prerequisite actions. And once everything is sorted out, you can have multiple components in an app that actually allows the user to say you're ready to proceed further. If there is any blocker, you can put some kind of error codes and other thing as part of the tool.
So you make sure the device, whether the user could be from an org which you are not yet ready to move. So all of that you had it in the script.
Like that's, for example, the device hash might be failed for that particular device. Yeah. We don't want that particular app. I'm just giving a scenario. Yeah. We don't want that particular machine to migrate to Intune or like an autopilot enable, like Entra ID,
if the
without
hash
having
is
the first prerequisites ordered.
Right.
So you need something inbuilt up the part of the tool that actually puts a green tick for the user to proceed further.
Right. Okay. Once so you wrote the script that even calls in using, that's what you mentioned, right? You have an app calling into Graph API, checking against the device to see if the hash is already there. That's like one of the checks you did. Nice. So it is fully automated that way.
Yeah, fully automated end-to-end, because Microsoft doesn't have a straightforward like a mechanism documented to actually do the migration for hybrid join or on-prem join to directly to Entra ID. Yeah, so the only recommended way is you need to do a complete wipe and then rebuild the device to be in a supported model. And Microsoft recommended a much cleaner. I would say it's a much cleaner experience for the user.
Yeah, it's a pure native
carrying over all that.
giant, right? Correct. Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend the other mechanism that we discussed earlier, using a pretty much third party or GitHub tools to convert it into Entra ID directly. You can do it. For me, it was successful, but I didn't want to go to that way, having multiple support burden, how the support team will be burdening them. And if even something goes wrong, it's hard to actually fix those issues remotely, because here you're supporting users remotely. Yeah, that's why we need to take into account when you're building something, all these things from end to end, how it's going to be simplified for the user. And then last, as I mentioned, as part of the tool, once the green tick and everything is sorted out for the user, it will be projected for the user. You can proceed further with the complete wipe and the once user presses that button, that's it.
Yeah.
It will do a complete wipe.
It initiates
The
the wipe,
reason why
and
I'm
then from that point,
yeah.
Autopilot takes over and it does the rest of
No, it
the.
just does the wipe of the device, and it will be in a plain vanilla state. Yeah, vanilla state with generic Windows OS, Windows 10. If you see, if you have a Windows 10 base OS, it will be sticking to the Windows 10 is a wrong topic. I shouldn't be talking about it. Yeah, just Windows 11. Pretty much, once you have that particular base OS targeted, you'll be having the vanilla image of that OS once the wipe is initiated. Then the user needs to key in the UPN details, which is pretty much the email address. Or once they key in the details, that's where the check happens at the back end. It checks for your hash is registered to that particular tenant, and then the autopilot registration starts kicking from Intune. So from there, it's straightforward. But to reach that state,
Yeah.
well, you need the do wipe method, which I mentioned, where it just does a complete
Yeah.
wipe of the device. And
Right.
then
And the
the other
prerequisites,
thing
right?
to
You don't want
yeah,
to get to the wipe and then realize, wow, I don't have the hash, and now they're left with a dead device and they can't do
yeah.
anything.
I think that was important too, because there were some devices that just sort of went into a loop or just sat there not doing anything, and then the end user could actually turn the device off and get back to a known state rather than losing everything and ending up. I think we had very few dead devices that actually had to be physically fixed up. I think it was quite streamlined from that point of view. I think with the two things. One, with the complete wipe and rebuild, I mean, you do come up with a nice clean device. I mean, if you use some third-party tools and you try to fudge it, if something goes wrong in 6 months' time, you don't know whether it's because you were carrying some baggage or a bad configuration from when you did your migration. You know, it's far better to come up clean, and it gives the end user a much more known good state. The other thing was around when Prem was talking about applications, is take this as an opportunity to just challenge what applications you're actually publishing. You know, do you need to continue to publish, say, Adobe Reader when Edge now has PDF capability for the majority of end users? So streamline what it is that you're actually pushing out and try to stick to just business applications. It'll just make life easier going forward.
Michael, were there apps where they couldn't migrate at all? Where some certain apps were too legacy that they couldn't move across? Did you come into any scenarios, and how did you have to put some workaround?
There was some early on that were quite legacy apps, but there were ways of publishing them, whether it was through some AVD type solution where we already had access to them that way, or it was a case of trying to work with the business to modernize the apps. I mean, quite often, and again, this is something that, you know, we probably didn't tackle early enough in the process, but it's definitely something you need to tackle right up front is what is your estate like, especially as you're moving through from Windows 10 to Windows 11, as we were doing towards the end as well, is you're starting to get into, different constraints with applications.
Right. Yeah, so those are good, like having AVD or Windows 365 as a fallback for apps that or some other sort of solution to get those apps still running somewhere and have the user remotely connecting to them.
And actually that reminded me of another benefit of moving to this cloud native world is things like Windows 365, because we, at the same time, to solve another problem, implemented Windows 365, and we could leverage all of the Intune policies that were being used for our standard desktop build, but in the cloud, which meant that we then had one way of managing both a virtual client environment and a physical client environment, which really makes life so much easier, because then it's for third parties, they can then use a standard virtual build.
Right.
and still your own corporate build. So it's it's a great benefit. But apps is definitely and that was my point about if you can move away from some apps, deploying, especially, if you find that you've got legacy apps that only one or two people using, what can you do to change those or find alternatives?
Right.
Because they'll burn you this time, or they'll burn you the next migration that you do.
So how were the timelines like? So you started, what was the initial rollout that you started off with? And did you do like waves of groups of users? And did you like a weekly cutover roll of people? How was that planning?
It was groups of people so some of the customer facing personas were left.
The frontline workers and
frontline workers and contact center type workers were left till later on because of different constraints and different ways of doing things. Where we knew that applications had been tested and were workable and everything was fine, especially for standard just office type workers, is to start pushing generally to people. But really it was engaging through their executive. So engage through an executive, get buy-in for that group of people, get them off and running, move to the next one, get them off and running. That was the way in that organization. In another organization, it was much more draconian in just just working through site by site. And so where you're doing a much more managed approach, especially in a large global organization, it's send a migration team to a location, migrate everyone there, move the team, or stand up a team in another location and move around. So it's really a business specific type. What is the appetite within your business for how you do migrations? But then it's also that piloting that Prem mentioned is so key, because that also proves to the business that you have a viable solution, that they know what it's going to be like. And so there's a confidence that everything will work well.
Just adding to that, one of the other key component I would advise any organization that are planning to go towards a cloud way of managing device under the same application category. Most of the organizations will choose co-management, which is pretty much they don't want to migrate all the apps to Intune. Just use a co-management feature, which pretty much allows your Intune managed device to speak to your SCCM environment and use the apps that's available here. But that's something that I wouldn't recommend for any organization to use. There are some major issues that if you're using a co-management type scenario, the main issues that I would see is you're trying to go away from a legacy environment where you need VPN connectivity or on-prem connectivity for installing the apps, how it's get delivered here. If you choose a co-management type of scenario, obviously it's pretty much like you're not going away to a modern way of managing. You're introducing the same VPN or on-prem dependency, because SCCM servers are hooked up to your on-prem. So you still require it's like you're going towards a modern way of managing a device,
but
and
you're still doing the old things, right?
Choosing a path of co-management which hooks up to the same on-prem environment. So for installing an app, you need to go to company portal, launch your VPN. You need to have a device connected to VPN before, and then try to install that, which is much, I would say, from the user experience perspective, it's not that great. I would like to
and
put
you have
that.
the same similar problems and things as well.
Yeah, that's
right?
the reason I would say any organizations who are trying to migrate, build their own. I would say have full confidence, because these are the things you will experience, like when you're making some decisions in doing the migration part. Have full confidence. You can have a good app development team, pretty much hooks into your SSO environment and your Intune environment. Do the migration in single go, and then pretty much do the validation with the pilot and other audits. I would say avoid co-management from an user experience perspective. That's not great. It might be good from a business point of view, like minimizing the cost and other thing.
Risk. And does it minimize cost though? Because you still have bits of the on-prem things and
So you usually
you end up at the end of the migration being worn out and forgetting to actually remove that co-management, and so you end up with this legacy environment forever.
It's going to be like another phase. You need to plan how to remove the co-management. I would say don't go to that path.
Exactly.
start towards modern way of managing things in the day
Right.
one. When you're doing the migration, avoid co-management part. It has a lot of issues. Issues in the sense the user experience is not great. It's like you're going towards a modern way of managing, still introducing the same slowness, internet connected management of deploying the updates, those kind of things, or manage the app. Yeah, that's something crucial.
Right.
I wanted to say from a whole migration part. Try to avoid these things. Go
Nice.
towards complete modern
Yeah.
way of managing.
Cool. Awesome. So that's really good that, you got the user, you did all of that. Finally, I want to focus on the new starters, right? Like there's a whole process I know you work through about when someone new joins the team, what the experience will be versus on-prem, because that's going to change now as well, right? Because you're going from someone getting a laptop and physically going in, getting an email with or the manager being there and giving them their initial password and, all of that's those to sort of a different experience for a new starter.
So, an organization may decide that every new starter has to come into the office, even though you don't need to be in the office to build a device. You actually get to meet your manager. You get to meet people.
Because we had this story, right? There were some North Korean
Koreans in the
workers,
yeah,
who are using a remoting scenario as well. So you need to make sure that if it says Merrill, that it's really Merrill and not someone who just knows Merrill's that initial password.
And I think that's where it comes back to this hybrid with working from home. I mean, until people get identity verification, and in Australia, obviously, the federal government is looking at more identity verification that will become more valuable, and then companies don't have to store passport data or license data, etc. But you've got
with
to work
Entra,
it
we
out.
have the verified ID flow as well, right? With the
Yes, exactly.
and things.
Yeah, so it's and this again comes back to when you're embarking on a project like moving to cloud native management of devices, what else is happening in your organization? So if you talk to your identity team, are they looking at identity verification? Can I leverage that? If I talk to my network team, are they doing zero trust network access to avoid VPNs? Are they going to make it easier for me to get access to applications? So how can I leverage other activities that are already happening within the organization and maybe become part of them and become part of a broader strategy?
Right. So how did the rollouts happen? Was it in group batches of like hundreds or thousands a week? What was your fastest velocity?
No, it depends.
Yeah.
Even with the consent, right? Some users might not action it, consider because you're doing a complete wipe method here, because the users needs to be well informed on this whole approach. Certain weeks have good numbers. You can even see 2,000, 3,000 numbers during the migration part. You can have a good reporting system that you can build from Intune and hook up with things that you can get the information part.
I guess it's not held back by the scale of the team, right? Because you had the user doing it. This was more on comms and encouraging the users to do it, right? You're not tied to the number of people there to
No, but I mean, it also depends on location. So some locations where internet connectivity, for example, bandwidth is very poor, means that you can't have as many people being migrated at the same time because you just don't have the bandwidth. And that was a real issue, especially in some overseas locations.
Right.
Within Australia, not having some URLs whitelisted through the proxy made it difficult doing it within the office because of network constraints. So the view was to get most people to do the migration at home. The ideal approach to minimize downtime was really to get people to do it after work. So people are working from home, set your laptop up, connect it to the internet at home, kick off the process, and then sit and watch TV and leave it running overnight, and then it's pretty well done by the morning, and it's not impacting your business day then. Now, it does impact your home internet connectivity. There's trade-offs there.
Yeah.
But again, this is where if you can get your corporate network set up correctly, with the right Microsoft URLs being allowed through, then people can do the migration in the office as well. Yeah, you're not restricted by that. But it's definitely the size of the team is not so much a restriction. It's making sure it's a robust process, and then multiple groups within the organization can all go at the same time. The issue comes is if you have an issue. And as soon as you have an issue, your team then is starting to get distracted on that. But really,
Nice.
it's a preparation and planning exercise first.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah. So 40,000 devices using a native Vibe and Entra Join, migrating from on-prem AD to Entra Join devices, 40,000 devices in 8 to 9 months. That's a neat achievement.
And then just try to overcomplicate it by doing a Windows 10 to Windows 11 migration at the same time.
At the same time.
Yeah. So, but that's for another story for another day.
Yes. But you also doing a parcel hash sync rollout as well, right? Like moving the users to that flow as well.
So when Prem was talking about the checks, before you can migrate, you have to be in password hash sync. You have to have secure boot.
You move them from federation to pages,
so that you check to make sure all of these things are in place before you start. And then when you start, it just becomes much easier, much more seamless.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael and Prem, for coming on and sharing all of your golden nuggets of advice and showing that it is possible to do this. Just takes a lot of planning, having really good engineering teams, strong teams.
Engineering team is fantastic, and the comms team. Yeah, it's the softer side and the technical side. If you can manage that, you're fine.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on EntraChat.
Thank you very much for having us, Meryl.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you again, Prem.
See you.